Those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
AMP2.TV presents Tell Us Your Business, where you're invited on the air to tell us what makes your business stand out in the community. It's important we hear from you to tell us all we need to know about what you do best. Tell Us Your Business uses the latest radio and television production systems, and all shows can be seen on AMP2.TV. If you have a question for our guest, call 888-565-1470. Now, let's get ready as our guest hits the airways and informs us about what we need to know on Tell Us Your Business.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to Tell Us Your Biz. I'm Gina Bella, and I have a show every other Thursday night called Living Life Well with Gina Bella. And tonight I have a very, very special guest with an extraordinary story about hope and just strength. And I'm so excited for you to hear the story. We did do a one-part to this a couple Thursday nights ago, so this is a two-part, but this is going to be the full story. So if you missed it, that's okay. This is going to be the full story. So I would love for you to meet her, and now I'm going to welcome her. Her name is Jennifer Marrow, and welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm invited here tonight because my story is very unique.
Yes.
And I can only go back to the beginning because I thought about how to tell this, but I think I need to tell it as I lived it because that makes the most sense. So when I grew up, you know, I have the earliest recollections of living on a ranch of sorts. We had a couple horses, a dog, we had chickens, and we had no electricity and no running water. And of course, as a kid, you don't know. You don't have a frame of reference. You don't have anything to compare it to, so you think that's normal.
Right.
And fast forward to maybe a few months to a year later, I was living in an actual apartment with electricity and water and thought that was pretty fabulous. And at the time, my mom, dad, 3 sisters, we all lived together. And that's what I knew to be life. But along the way, as I grew older, certain things would happen, certain questions would pop into my head, certain clues would start to make me ask more questions to unravel the truth of my story and my existence.
Like what kind of questions and things that you thought about would...
Well, when I was in first grade, I remember learning about DNA and how, not how we have dominant traits and we have recessive traits. And I wondered how I was in this family, a blonde hair, blue-eyed girl with all these people with dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes. And it made no sense scientifically to me, and I had a lot of questions about that. And I asked my mom, and she said, oh, sometimes, you know, flukes happen, and you look a lot like your father who you don't know. At this time, she had already divorced the person that I thought was my dad.
Oh,
so,
I see, okay.
and that was quite early on in my life, so I could barely remember him, just like a bare memory.
Mm-hmm.
And she married someone else, and this man was also an alcoholic. So my whole life growing up, I was surrounded by alcohol, drugs, violence. It was, also in my frame of reference, normal. I didn't know healthy relationships and what a healthy marriage would look like and healthy family dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So that was still normal to me. And then there was a day when I realized someone was having a birthday and they had cake. And I had never had a birthday or cake.
Oh.
I was 7. And I said to my mother, why have I never had cake or a birthday? And she looked a little nervous, and then she looked at my stepfather, and she said, go play. So I left the room, but not really, because I'm sneaky. And I went halfway around a corner, and I sat and listened. And, I was too young to know what this meant, but I heard her say, what are we going to do? She wants a birthday. And my stepdad said, well, then we'll have to come up with a date. And she said, well, she goes to school in a week on August 28th. When she goes to school, I'll bake a cake, and that'll be her birthday. And then he said, well, you better write that down. We'll never remember that from year to year. And
Now, at 7,
Yes.
and you heard this.
yes.
Was it all like, how did you feel? Like, did you,
It was a big question mark, but I didn't know how birthdays worked.
okay.
You know, I still hadn't the knowledge that it literally means the day you came from your mother's
Right.
body, you know. So I thought, at least I'm going to have cake. That's all I really thought
Right.
at 7. And so that day I came home and there was a cake. And they said, happy birthday. And so from that moment, I celebrated August 28th as my birthday and believed that to be the truth.
Okay.
And so, but it was still another clue. And even though I didn't understand it then, it stayed in my memory. And then other people would talk about their birthdays and the day that they were born. And then their moms would talk about, oh, yeah, you're in my stomach and this happened. And I said, that doesn't sound like what happened with me. You know, it just seemed like my birthday was a different kind of scenario,
Right.
you know. But I still didn't know what to think of it. So I, you know, kind of didn't want to make any waves. And then when I was about 12 years old, I was in 6th grade, I ran across this piece of paper. And my mom told me to go into her purse and get her cigarettes and a lighter. She had a stroke. And I was doing everything for her. And I ran across a notebook piece of paper that said, I, Desiree Jean Hines, give up full guardianship to Alice Angel and Joseph Angel of Sunshine Flowers Hines. And I thought this was a really weird piece of paper. And on the top, it had my current name on it, which at the time was Jessica Lynn Lewis. And you could tell that was written much later, and you could tell it was written in blue marker when the rest of the thing was written in blue ink. So then I called up my best friend, Adalia, and I said, Adalia, I ran across this document. It has my name on it, and I don't understand it. So I read it. She said, I think you're adopted. You need to go and talk to your mom. And so my mom couldn't speak because of the stroke. So I just held up the piece of paper and I said, tell me the truth. Am I adopted? And she just quietly nodded her head. And I was really afraid to talk more about it because she was in poor health and I didn't want to be the reason that she had a heart attack or something.
Right.
So I quietly took that new knowledge with me and I said, maybe that's why they didn't know my birthday. I'm adopted, but still wouldn't they have known my birthday? So I was still being my own little Sherlock Holmes for my
Right.
own life. And then another thing happened that year that I turned 12. I had a lot of repressed memories because sometimes the kindest thing that God does for you when you've had horrible trauma happen to you is he allows you to forget for quite some time. And so I had graciously forgotten some terrible things that have happened to me. But then I woke up on this morning when I was 12 and I had remembered so many things. And at first I thought maybe it was just a dream. I'm hoping it was just a dream. And then I started asking some pointed questions to my mom, and I realized it wasn't a dream. There were some severe abuses that happened to me as a child, physically, sexually, neglect.
With your mom or?
With someone who at the time, the man she married, she had 3 sons. He had 3 sons.
Okay.
And so a lot of things had happened to me, and I was finally remembering them, and I didn't know what to do with this because it was like, for me, it was like brand new, fresh trauma. And so I became really ill during that time. I couldn't process it, and I was coming up with migraines and gastrointestinal problems, and I was just a very sickly person. I was trying my best to grapple with what I knew had happened. And then life was going on fairly well, and now I'm in high school, and the dad that she divorced, that I thought was my dad, she went back to him. When she had her stroke, he came back into her life. And I thought my life was going to be great because I had my real dad now. And he had stopped drinking, so he was no longer an alcoholic. And my mom, because she had a stroke, couldn't drink. So things started to get better. You know, I thought, okay, neither one of them can drink, so this is going to be a better existence than before, you know?
Right.
And unfortunately, when my mom had one more stroke, my dad was very frail mentally, and he had a mental breakdown. And I think as a fear response, he didn't want to lose me too. So he began doing strange things like meeting me the second I got off of school, putting me in the car, bringing me straight home. He put me in a room that had C-clamps on all the windows.
Oh, my.
And I didn't know what I had done wrong or why my life was changing in this way, you know. But I knew my mom was in the hospital, and he would leave me in the room and let me out when needed for bathroom breaks, meals, and school. And I started to panic. I started thinking, what if he's not here and there's a fire or any number of things and I can't get out because the door was locked. And the C-clamps, I kept messing with them and fiddling with them and every day trying to get them off until one day I took a towel and I had wrestled with it quite a bit, and it fell off and it hit the windowsill. So it made a loud clang, and I got really nervous that he was going to realize what I had done and come in with his vice grips and re-tighten all the clamps. So I hand tightened it and I put it back on, and I threw myself in bed and just tried not to breathe too heavy in case he opened the door, he'd know that, you know, I had found a way out.
Right.
And I said to myself, I'm going to jump out this window at 2 in the morning. That's the time when I think everybody will be still and there won't be anybody awake.
And
So
how old were you at that time?
I was 16.
Okay.
And so that night, I actually almost ruined my own plan. I fell completely asleep. I was exhausted just thinking about the idea of getting out.
Right.
And I fell asleep, but the most amazing thing happened, and this is what I believe my experience, I believe this was God waking me up. I heard a voice yelled, Jessica, which was my name back then. And it was, I jumped up and I thought somebody had actually called my name and was making me wake up. And I looked around and there was nobody in the room. And then I was trying to remember what's going on, you know, and I realized I'm supposed to jump out that window. It's 2:00. Now's the time. And I gathered as few things as I could carry in a pillowcase, and I tossed it out first, and then I jumped out afterwards. And I didn't really have a plan. There's a lot of stupidity to my thing, I only had one step, jump out the window.
And you just knew you needed to get away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I had a boyfriend at the time, a high school sweetheart, and back then there were no cell phones, so I ran to the nearest payphone, and I called his number, and I asked him if he could come get me, or his mom could come get me. And his mom did come get me. She was a single mom, a little bit of a train wreck, a drug addict, but still that was normal to me. So I thought, this is a fabulous plan. I'm going to be her children's nanny. And I wanted to earn my keep because all growing up I kept hearing, earn your keep. I couldn't rest. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't just be a kid. It was earn your keep, earn your keep, earn your keep. And so this was drilled in my head. How am I going to earn my keep? So I said to the woman, Anne Marie, I said, do you mind if I take care of your children, I cook, I clean, and I help them with their homework, and I can live here for free? And she said, sure, and she gave me her garage, and I lived out my next couple years like that so I could finish high school. And but right after I jumped out the window, something happened. The mom, who I considered mom, died. She had that final fatal stroke, and it was another blood clot to the brain. And so I didn't know whether I dare to go to the funeral, or will that be what gets me caught again?
Right.
And so I was really struggling with what to do about that. I thought long and hard, and then I came up with sort of a safety plan. I went with my boyfriend, and I told his mother to wait outside with her boyfriend. And if I don't come out, that she needs to call the police, come in after me. And so
Did she know the story and how you were like a prisoner in your own room?
she knew that, but she still thought it was my father, and she thought he was overly strict.
Okay.
And it seemed like an unconventional parenting method, but still she considered it in the realm of maybe desperate, but still parents can do that.
Right.
She wasn't that healthy either. So she thought she was just getting me out of a situation that could turn worse, And so then I went in there, and I had 3 siblings who were all very angry that I jumped out the window. And they cornered me in the bathroom, and one pulled my hair and one slapped me, and they were telling me I had to come back. And I told them I wasn't, and that not only was my boyfriend waiting for me out in the hallway, but that people were waiting for me outside the building, and I better come out in one piece, and I better show up in their car. And so they did let me go, and I went back out and went through the rest of my mother's funeral, and I left there and thought I was never going to see any of them again. I really did. The one thing I came to do was to say goodbye to my mother.
Right.
And now I was going to go on and live the rest of my life happily ever after. So I married my high school sweetheart, and he got hit by a drunk driver 1 month after our marriage.
Oh.
So I was already having a rough ring of bad luck. And so I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I went to school, and I started to study at Liberty University, a Christian college, and I went on to be your son's teacher.
Yes. Yes.
And I married the deacon at a church there, at the church I was working for. And that wasn't a healthy relationship either. But again, all my examples were unhealthy, but it's healthier. He was an alcoholic, but he was in recovery, so probably this was going to be great. But he didn't stay in recovery, and that marriage faltered. So 14 years of abuse and infidelity, and finally he had a severe problem that was going to jeopardize my child, so I had to file a restraining order. And when I did that, he filed for a divorce the very next day. And so now fast forward to sometime in the 90s, I'm divorced and raising my daughter alone, and I got cancer. And it's breast cancer. It was a very aggressive one that is very prevalent in the Ashkenazi Jewish community. So my oncologist said, "Are you by any chance Ashkenazi Jew?" And since I really knew so little of my background, and I thought maybe I was adopted, I said, "I really can't tell you the answer to that." But I kept seeing these commercials that said, "I thought I was German, but I'm really French."
Right, right.
And so I said, maybe this is my answer to whether or not I'm Ashkenazi Jew, because as a mom, I really wanted my daughter to get the health baseline earlier if we had this aggressive gene. So about 4.5 years ago, for Mother's Day, I got the kit as a present. And I spit into the tube, and I thought that it was going to come snail mail. So I'm so old school, I kept checking my mailbox, and nothing would come. And about a month or so after, when I actually got the results in my box, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I said, let me just clean out this horribly overloaded mailbox. And I'm glad I just didn't massively delete everything. But I went through each one, and I saw one that says, Ancestry, your results are in. And I said, oh, good. I get to know what my nationality is. And
Right.
then I can tell Abby, either you got to get your baseline mammogram at 35 or you don't. And it said I was Irish and Scandinavian, and that was really good news for me, health-wise, for my daughter. But then it said, first-degree relative. He's either your son or your father. His name is Gary Lee Morrow. And that made no sense. I knew I didn't have a son. And that wasn't the name of my dad, but there was that story that I might be adopted. So I thought, this is probably my biological father. So then I looked online. I scoured the internet for any sign of a Gary Lee Morrow. And he actually had 2 Facebook accounts. And I private messaged both of them. And he never really answered. And he didn't answer the email in Ancestry either. And my emails got a little more desperate. I started out by saying, hey, this Ancestry thing says you're my dad. Could you contact me so we could talk? And when he didn't, I kept getting more frustrated, thinking, this is some kind of deadbeat dad who's afraid I'm going to ask for child support 50 years later.
Right.
So I said, listen, old man, literally in my email, listen, old man, I don't want money from you. I just need to know my medical history. Can you give me that much? And I was just getting desperate. And then finally I said, I need to stop this. And I started other realms. I looked for phone numbers, and I found a landline phone number. And I was cleaning a house one day because I have a cleaning business. And I found this phone number, and the client said, you have to call this number right now. And I said, I can't call right now because, like, this could be emotional, and this could be, like, not good news. Maybe he'll reject me, whatever.
Right.
You know, so I said, I'll do it later. Maybe I'll write him a letter. But I had only gotten halfway home. I was in my van, and I got halfway home, and I pulled over. I said, I got to call him right now. And so I called, and a woman's voice answered and said, hi, how are you? She was selling puppies. She's a breeder of dogs, his wife. And I said, my name, and I told her what I knew to be true of myself. I was Jessica Lynn Moss. I was born in California and San Francisco, August 28, 1969. And she said, oh my God. And she started crying and screaming. She was a little incoherent, and I said, I don't know what I have on the phone here, but she said, Gary, it's your daughter, Jennifer. Come quickly. And I said, no, ma'am, my name is Jessica. She says, no, it's not. You're Jennifer Lee Morrow. You were born June 15th, 1969, in Port Lavaca, Texas. And she said, everything
Wow.
you've been told is a lie.
She said that on the phone?
And I said, oh, no. I think she's got me confused with someone else's Ancestry thing, messed it up and gave me the wrong people, you know. And she says, you were abducted in 1971. And I said, that's definitely not me. I don't think this is me.
Right.
I had such an unwillingness to believe this was my story. So I said, no, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm who you think I am. And she yelled, Gary, get on the phone. And an incoherent, sobbing man got on the phone. He was less help than she was because I couldn't understand him. It was just groans and sobs and crying. And I thought, this man's in a lot of pain. I'm sorry to be mixed up in this story, you know, but luckily my very logical brother was there, and he works for the government in the Pentagon, and he's very matter of fact. Nothing shocks him. He's seen everything. And he knew the story from childhood that he had a missing, abducted sister. So he came on very matter of factly and said, what these people are telling you is true. Your name is Jennifer Lee Morrow. You were abducted in 1971. We've been looking for you for many years. And my dad took this DNA test in the hopes of finding you. And I said, this man sounds logical. He's not insane, so maybe there's validity to the story.
Right.
So I decided that I was going to do a second DNA test. One like Jerry Springer uses, you know,
Right.
diagnostic DNA. I said, well, you know, that one for sure will tell me the truth, because Ancestry, it could be like a bubble gum kind of science, you know, who knows. And so I said, I hope you don't mind, but I really feel the need for a second DNA test. And he says, I'm not waiting to come see you for that second DNA test. Fine, we'll do it, but I'm coming to see you right now. And he booked a flight a week later, and my brother came, and he filmed the whole thing. I didn't know if he'd know who I was or how to find me, so I held a yellow smiley face emoji balloon so he could see. It ended up on Channel 7, that whole little film of me holding the balloon and him hugging me.
Wow.
And he hugged me so tight I thought he'd break nearly every rib in my body. But as I looked into his eyes, and that hug was so familiar, And I felt like every cell in my DNA knew this man.
You knew that you knew.
And I said, I probably don't need a DNA test. First of all, he looks just like me. Our hands are identical. He's the reason I could never be a hand model. And he was larger than me, and very few people are taller than me. And he had my same ruddy complexion, and he just held me so long and uncomfortably long because I'm just not a huggy person. But I knew this was my dad, and I didn't need the test, but I still did it because I felt like at least courts might need the test now because ancestry is not exactly, clinical science.
Right.
So I went through with a second DNA test, and it was verified. And he said, I know where your mother is, and I can give you her number. And so I said, okay, I'm ready for this. Let me call her. And I called, and that response wasn't the same as what my dad gave me. I was very disappointed. First, she told the person who answered the phone, who later I found out was my sister Jessica, to hang up the phone, hang up the phone, hang up the phone. And I said, listen, I know she's telling you to hang up the phone, but that woman needs to know I'm her daughter. That woman needs to know I'm alive, and that whatever happened 40-something years ago, that I made it, and I'm here. And she can have a relationship with me or not. I don't really care, but she might need the peace of mind of knowing I'm alive.
Right.
And she whispered, I will call you back. And I said, okay. And she did call me back, and she said, I just told her that you're real, and I'm trying to get her to call you. And she did call me eventually, but it was so underwhelming. And I have a daughter, so I try to put myself in the same situation and think, what if I'd lost my daughter, and then out of nowhere, she calls? I might not believe it. So maybe this is disbelief, maybe this is shock. I try to give her the benefit of the doubt,
Right.
But I said, listen, I know for whatever reason you're resistant to talking to me, but I'm really your daughter. You can look at my Facebook page. I friend requested it at you at 2 a.m. and you didn't respond. But you can go look at all my pictures, try to figure out if you think I look like your long-lost daughter, what I might look like years later. And I have a distinctive birthmark on the back of my left leg. And she said, I'll call you back. And she did take about an hour, probably scouring through all my pictures. And she did call me back, and she said, there's no denying you're my daughter.
Wow.
And so I said, well, I don't know how you want to go forward because I don't know what happened, but you're the only one who has answers. My dad said, you left Virginia and took me with you, and you never told him where you were. And then 6 years after I turned up missing, you let him know I was abducted. I have questions.
Right.
What happened? Why did you wait 6 years to tell my dad that his daughter was abducted? And her answers were not very satisfactory. Some of them were lies, because she couldn't remember her own lies. And a lot of it was, luckily, she doesn't like to talk on the phone, a lot of it was letters. So I could lay the letters side by side and compare them. And one, she said she never did drugs. She was trying to deny that she was a hippie or a drug user, or that she was in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco in a commune. But those are pretty verifiable facts.
Right.
And I did talk to my siblings on her side. On my dad's side, I have 3 brothers and a stepbrother. On my mom's side, I had 3 sisters and a brother. So I said, I need to find out who my mother is from each of my siblings. And they started calling me, and they all had stories of who she was. And she was definitely a drug-addicted hippie in San Francisco. And so I said, I'm okay with whatever happened. The FBI, they called me into their office, and I went down to the headquarters in Miami, and they said, we want to know who to prosecute. They're asking, what happened to you? I told them what happened, and they said, now we need to know who to prosecute. And I said, well, everybody's dead. The dad that was raising me at the time died of esophageal cancer. The mom that was raising me died of a stroke. And the sibling that I believe did the abduction, she died of cirrhosis of the liver. So if you're looking for a prosecution, that's not going to happen. And they said, then we can close out your file. You're no longer a cold case file, and it's resolved, and there's no one to prosecute. You can go and heal, And I was grateful for that because I really didn't want. I actually loved the dad that raised me, even though there were abuses. I found my way through forgiving him because he was truly repentant and begged me for forgiveness and said that he was going to try to make my life better. So I believed his apology was sincere and that he had a lot of regret and remorse over the things that happened to me. But my mom never told my siblings about me. I was her dirty little secret, her skeleton in the closet. And so when I came forward, I was a real embarrassment to her because she had lost each one of them. She had lost custody of them. And so to have another sibling that ended up abducted was just
Right.
another black mark on her parenting record, you know.
Right.
And so she was very defensive and closed off, and it was really hard to have a relationship with her. I really tried for a solid year. I would call her. The conversations were very one-sided. And eventually I just gave up. I did tell my siblings I wished to have a relationship with her, but I also have really strong boundaries now because I've been through a lot of counseling, a lot of therapy, and I only surround myself around things that are going to bring me some positivity or benefit, something to make my life better.
Exactly.
Because my past has been so bad, my future's got to be better than that. So if she gets healthy and wants a healthy relationship with me, I still leave the door open for that. But it doesn't sound like she's in that space, to be honest, enough to tell me what really happened. Because at the heart of it, she probably knows it's her fault. I did find out that she didn't report my disappearance even to the police, that actually the person who did the reporting was 6 months after my abduction. It was a lot like the Casey Anthony case where the mother, my grandmother,
Right.
reported me missing in Manassas, Virginia. When she came back home without me, she asked, "Where's Jennifer?" And she said she got stolen 6 months ago in San Francisco. And she said, "Did you file a missing persons report? Did you call the police?" And she said, "I looked for her myself. I even went as far as Kansas City. I was following clues." She said, "That is not sufficient." And she said, "We're calling the police right now." And so 6 months later, the police said, "This is now a cold trail. This is
Right.
too late to actually find her. Sufficient evidence is already long gone, and you're so far away from the place where it happened."
Is your grandmother still alive?
No, she died of cancer. So we have a little, I have a little knowledge of some of my history of cancer, but I hear she was a wonderful person. My siblings all said that when they got taken away from my mother, they went to her, and she was loving and nurturing, and she was a wonderful lady. And, my dad said that my mom was a wild child hippie who loved to explore, life, drugs, alcohol, And so when she ran off with me in tow, she actually ran off with another man. And that relationship didn't last, and he kicked her out. And that's when she ended up in this commune called the Briar Patch. And I have learned to I have to forgive her even though she hasn't asked for forgiveness.
Right.
Because at the heart of it, I do believe she's the reason her lifestyle was such that I was an easy target. My sister Jessica did say that one night she got drunk and told her that she was approached by a young girl who told her about this swingers club and said, "There's this place you could go and have adult fun, and if you want, I'll watch your baby for free." And she said, "Sounds great to me." And she went out that night, and when she came back, I was gone, and so was this young girl who was offering the free babysitting. And she also said that at that time, hippies did not trust the police, so that's why she didn't call the police.
Right.
And the police didn't like hippies, and they were likely to think that they were somehow at fault, and she felt like immediately she'd be the prime suspect. And so that's another reason she chose not to go the police route. And it made enough sense to me that I can forgive that. It's not how I would have proceeded as a parent, of course.
Right,
but,
of course.
you know, I just chose to forgive it. And honestly, my life, if I focus on my dad's side of it, he was the one who was always looking for me. He's the one who did the DNA test in the hopes of finding me. He's the one who told all my siblings, you have a sister out there, help me find her, because 2 of them are in government. He was asking them to abuse their powers to find me. But there was no way for him to know that my name had been changed multiple times. I remember being Sunshine Flowers Hines. I remember being Jessica Lynn Angel. It seemed like every time we moved, I got a new name. And I was the only one who got a new name. So that clue, along with the only one who didn't have a cake until I was 7, I said, I'm different than these other people here. There's a difference. They get a birthday. They don't have to change their names. And so all of that, finally when I found my dad, it was the piece of the puzzle that made everything else make sense. Because
Wow.
adoption didn't make sense. This was the only thing that actually made sense. And I'm still piecing together all of the rest.
And I know you guys have visited many, many times.
Yes. I go to see him as often as I can every holiday. I either choose Thanksgiving or Christmas. And one very unique thing that I think is amazing is my dad kept telling my brothers, she's going to be here. And the very last time he said it was right before I was found. And my brother, Don, the one who was so logical, he said in his brain, thought it, didn't dare say it, what are the odds you're going to find her? You're not going to find her. She's dead by now. But he didn't dare say it because every time it was Father's Day, every time it was my birthday, he would cry. And so
Right.
he didn't want to dash his hopes. But the very next holiday, I was around that table.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. I've been writing a book.
Yes, tell us about the book.
So normal people can remember things like, oh, their childhood, they remember this and that. I've had to go backwards. Like, I can remember I graduated high school in 88. So I started from there and I worked my way backwards. And I've pieced together a timeline of my life because even though I can't remember things like in relation to the home life, school life, I can remember I loved school. And so I remember in 6th grade, this tragic thing happened to me. And so I pieced it together that way, but I started on my timeline and I decided that there's enough missing people still
Yes.
who don't know that they're missing maybe. I didn't know I was missing. I
Right.
didn't know I was an abductee. And there's enough parents looking for children. And just like my dad who thought I was long gone or dead, there are people still alive. I was watching TV and I saw this guy who said that he found himself on a missing children's site and he was now grown.
Wow.
And so he saw someone had done a time-elapsed age thing, and he said, this kid on this site looks like me, and he got all his friends to look at it, and they said, that's you. And he found out he was that missing person. But with DNA now that wasn't available, sometimes when some of us were stolen in 71, DNA was not a science that was available to us. And now that it is, both parties have to put their
Right.
DNA in. And I may have done it on accident looking for my nationality, but if you know that you are missing a child, you should definitely
Yes.
use the DNA.
I would think that
I would
people
put it in all of them, Ancestry, 23andMe, whatever is out there, put
Right.
it in there.
Right.
And if you're someone who has questions about your childhood like I did, you should put your DNA in. If you've got these weird clues or questions or anomalies that don't make sense, I would say go ahead and do it. Now, unfortunately, sometimes you'll find out other things like mom was unfaithful. There's a whole Facebook site of people who found out that their dad isn't really their dad. But, if you think that you could be a missing person or you're missing a person, this is a really good science. And I'm so grateful for the people who bought. My dad's kind of frugal like I am. I didn't buy my kit. Someone bought it for me for Mother's Day the same year. My stepmother bought it for him for Father's Day of the same year.
Wow.
And that had to happen that way, because if I bought the kit, say, years later or years earlier, and his DNA wasn't in there, I'd say, oh, well, that's a missing dead end. And if I wasn't in there, he'd say, that's a dead end. But we both did it 3 months apart. And we were both
That's amazing.
going
Right
to our,
there. That's like an amazing part of the story.
Yeah, and we were both going to our mailbox, not our inbox, to look for our results.
Like father, like daughter.
So, you know, now we're forging this relationship. The person who's in charge of the Missing Center for Children, the Adam Walsh Foundation,
Yes.
they got in touch with me, and they graciously helped me navigate my way to have a relationship with my dad. They said, we don't know who you can trust, and we're going to help you navigate, because we don't know that your parents are good people. You don't know that your parents are good people. All we know is you turned up missing, and that doesn't happen, you know, for no reason.
Right.
Something might have gone wrong, and we don't know. And so they dashed my hopes at first, because I said, now that I found a dad and a mom, you know, at first a dad, well, I thought life would be happily ever after, and we'd just move forward, and I'd hug him, and we'd just be, you know, family. But they said, you know, we've got to go slow. And they said the same thing to my dad, and he was so upset. You know, he just wanted to embrace me and start a relationship with me. But they gave me enough counseling, and I'm telling you, when I hugged him, I said, this man is safe. This man he is family. When I hugged my mom, she may have been family, but she didn't feel safe.
Right.
And so I said, well, okay, I don't really need, you know, counseling to know who's safe and who's not. My mom might not be safe. She might have been the reason I got abducted. But this man right here, he is safe, and I love him. And so I've really been so lucky to have found him and to spend Christmas with him, or Thanksgiving. And
That's
I've
such a
introduced, I
blessing.
brought my boyfriend to him, and he approves. And, you know, I
Right.
let him meet his granddaughter. And that's the other side. My daughter never had family on my side, because even if I knew where they were, if they were alive, I would have never brought her to them.
Right.
And so when she'd ask about her grandma, grandpa on my side, I just said, they're dead. And she'd want facts, and I just glossed over it. And aunts and uncles, no, we're not going to see your aunts, you know. So now she has a grandfather, she has uncles, and she has extended cousins.
That's beautiful. She must be loving that.
Yeah, I'm grateful that she has that, because I did feel the lack of her having that, you know. And she's not as close with her dad, so she's not close with her dad's side. So now she has extended family to go to for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, whatever. And, you know, she's helping me with the book in some ways, because, you know, she remembers things I don't remember, you know. And even now, my counselor helps me uncover memories. And so as soon as I get a memory, I jot it down and I
Right.
put it in a timeline. And so that's why it's been, you know, 4.5 years, and I haven't released it. My first copy was very cathartic. There was a lot of cussing. It was simply therapy,
Right.
because it was a new discovery. I was pretty angry that there were a lot of lies. And, you know, just think about when I had cancer, another thing happened. My license expired, and I had to renew it, and I had a fake birth certificate. So I went to renew my license, and they said, this is not legitimate. And so they didn't renew my license, so I was no longer able to apply for a job.
Right.
I was no longer able to earn money, have a bank account, sign the back of a check, and, you know, deposit it. So a lot of things changed. Because of 9/11, they changed the way you get your license. You have to show your birth certificate. And when I called to get a copy of mine, they said, We have no record of you being born, that name, that birth date, that place of birth. And so they gave me a letter of record for many places because I said, well, maybe I was born here and maybe I was born there and maybe I was born. I tried several states, California, Alabama. I heard different stories, so I just tried different states with the same name, same birthday. So it was never going to be a birth certificate.
Right.
Because the real truth was Port Lavaca, Texas, Jennifer Lee Morrow, June 15th, 1969, and I never would have known that. So finding my dad, I actually had a fight to get my identity back.
Yeah.
And so I had to go before a judge and explain my story and ask that I be granted my real name, my real birth date, my real place of birth, and be acknowledged as my dad's daughter. We actually had to go before her 3 times. She was a judge who actually made the news for being quite irascible and unreasonable. So she retired early so she wouldn't be asked to step down. But on the 3rd time, for whatever reason, she took pity on my dad because he was in a cast. And I think after we left the courthouse, we got a call from my attorney, and he said, come back to the courthouse.
Wow.
She's going to give you what you want. And so that day, we were having breakfast on Las Olas, and I was saying, I can't believe that I found my family and I still can't be who I am. I'm still this person that's not real, and I can't prove my existence. I'm here and I can't prove my existence.
Right.
And as I was saying that, my brother Don got the phone call and he said, we got to go back to the courthouse. And so I said, great. And when I held that document in my hand, I knew my life was going to finally begin. I was finally going to be a person, a real person with a real name, a real birthday, a real place of birth, and real parents and real siblings. So ever since then, everything else has just been cake. I can't have a bad day. I could get stuck in traffic. I could wreck a car. Whatever. I can't have a bad day because compared to what I've been through and now having my family, everything is cake.
That's what I love about you, because you've always, ever since I knew you, before you even knew this story, I would have never guessed you've had such a hard past. It was like the grace of God just surrounding you and just blessing all the little children and kindergarten and pre-K rather. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, I mean, your story is, I hope that it gives so much hope to other people out there. And I hope that it's, just gives courage and strength to just rise above with, things that may transpire in people's lives that just are hard and just tough to deal with. And, there's always going to be a tomorrow, to just rise above. And I am so proud of you.
Well, I appreciate that. God has really been good to me, and I'm so grateful that he gave me the opportunity to find my dad. And I feel that was the day I truly became whole, and there was a lot of healing that took place in that one hug.
Yes.
And a lot of questions that were finally laid to rest for me.
So when do you think your beautiful story of courage and hope and everything?
My dad's hoping I'll release it sometime around the end of this year, around Christmas. And I'm starting to work in earnest to remove all the cuss words from the original one. And as I remember new things, to put those new details that I'm remembering in there. And I work on it a little bit every morning, and I work in a place where I can, work on it there because I have a lot of downtime. So I'm hoping by Christmas.
Wow. Wow. I can't wait to get a copy of it. Do you want to let us know the title or?
Well, I thought I had a title, and then someone told me that title's taken. So I guess they're going to do a mock-up and going to give me, they said after they read the manuscript, they'll know what the title should be. And they'll give me ideas of the title. But I was going to have it be, because God has been the one who's guided me and kept me safe. And I feel like I've been protected under his wing because I shouldn't even be alive. Most abductee victims aren't. And I felt like he was like a bird and I was under his wings, so I was going to call it Under the Shadow of His Wings. But that is taken, so.
Well, I'm sure it'll come to you and you'll have just a beautiful title for your book to tell the whole story. And I'm just so happy for you that you found your family, and I hope one day to meet your dad. You know,
Oh, yeah.
You and I have been friends for a little over 20 years, and
He's amazing. I now know where I get my goofy gene, all my silly jokes. He's me, or I'm him.
right. Wow. So is there any other thing that, before we end the show, is there anything that you might want to just give hope to for someone out there that may be struggling in different areas of this or not
Well,
knowing?
That's really important because, my struggles have been hard for me at times. And early on, I thought I was going to end my life. I was 16. Before I jumped out the window, I said that was one way out. And I'm so grateful now that I didn't, because had I done that, I would have never seen the happily ever after. I would have never met my dad. And more importantly, that man who's missing his daughter would have never found his daughter.
Right.
His sorrow was so great and so tangible, even though he had other children. He never did get over losing me. And so I think the other thing is I was searching for my real family since I thought I was adopted. And I had tried a lot of things. And at the last minute, I was thinking, I'm done searching. And it was at that moment that I found my dad within months of thinking I was done searching.
Wow.
So don't give up if you're trying to achieve a goal or find an answer or a solution. Right before you find the solution, you might be tempted to give up, but I'd say press on, because that's when you'll find your solution.
And you're happily ever after,
Yes.
like you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being my guest tonight. You can come back anytime when your book comes out, or even before then, just to chat. I love you, and thank you for being with us for Tell Us Your Biz tonight on a Monday night. And any questions, I'm Gina Bella. You could always reach out to me at 954-857-5444, and I could get you in touch with Jennifer if you'd like. Thank you. Oh, and my show, Living Life Well with Gina Bella, is every other Thursday night, and it's fun, so please join me. It won't be this Thursday, it'll be the following, so please be sure to tune in. Thank you again. Have a great evening. Good night.
This has been Tell Us Your Business, where a special guest comes on every week and tells us what they do. All shows can be seen on amp2.tv, and if you wish to be a guest, call 866-224-5422 and tell us about your business. That's 866-224-5422. This has been an amp2.tv production.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.